So today we're going to spend the bulk of the time on this step of the process around of becoming a successful real estate agent business owner and the steps around plans and business plans specifically. And really three topics on this that I like to focus on: an annual plan, a weekly plan, and then what we call a growth plan, which is essentially like what you need to learn, what you need to find out, and having some sort of, formality or at least a system or process to that learning, the personal development plan from here. So the first plan that I'll cover would be the annual plan. Okay. And in our KW world, this is called a GPS or 135. Okay. And the GPS can mean a couple things. One, just understand that, kind of think GPS like a roadmap and giving you directions and, how to get to your destination, right? This annual plan that is comprised of strategies and priorities to focus on to lead you to that destination, to your goals, becomes key. GPS could also stand for goals, priorities, and strategies, which is really where the 135 concept of things really comes from. And what a 135 is essentially a formula to work towards one goal. Okay, so like one annual goal of I want to sell $3 million in real estate this year would be an example of an annual goal. It could just be I want to make $75,000 in real estate income. I want to make $1 million. I want to sell 50 homes. I want to sell, I want to, make this much money in real estate in order to go buy an investment property. Whatever the goal is, as long as it's, well thought out, like you're not wrong, right? From there, you get into the three part of it. So you have one goal and then three priorities or really core concepts. It's the way I like to think about it, or more on a general level of what to focus on. So for example, lead generation becomes a priority. And this, give you the cheat code here, like, that topic should be on everybody's plan one way or another, or multiple ways or another. It's not, everybody doesn't have to have the same lead generation plan, but, we need to generate opportunities for business. So it's always going to be a focal piece to this. Another priority could be building a database or just your database in general, right? And then you get into, so having, the GPS recommendation, the 135 recommendation is to have three of these, more general, less specific, core type of principles or, core concepts or priorities to focus on. Then you get into the five part of a 135, where each of those core subjects will have five specific strategies to execute on. So again, 135, one goal, three concepts, five specific strategies for each of those three concepts. So really doing this, by the book, would leave you with 15 specific strategies to execute on. Now, I'll take a breather here to say a couple things. One, this GPS or this 135 is an example and a template of how to build an annual business plan. Okay. It's put out there for a reason in terms of those that use it, over time have proven that it's a pretty impactful and successful ways to go about building a plan and using a plan for success in your business. I'm going to say I would recommend doing this too, specific to the way that it's done. Okay. But above that is that just the need that you have to have an overall longer term business plan to follow for your business to be successful. What I'm saying is like if you have that tool of an annual business plan, but it's not exactly like a GPS or a 135, like that's okay as long as it works for you. My thing is just prioritizing having something that you're using as a tool for an annual plan to reach your goals. If it's not exact verbatim to a 135 type of format, that's okay. Just have something that you're following. Have something that is designed to, fulfill the goal. Something that has a design of it that is intended where it's like, if I do what's on this plan, I'm going to reach my goals. If that's not a GPS in the Keller Williams jargon land type of thing, like that's okay. You also have the ability to not have to reinvent the wheel within our company and just, copy and paste these templates and put in there, things that are meaningful for you to achieve and how to go about it. So I'll stop there. Any questions, generally speaking, on this 135 GPS concept? I'm going to show you a version of it in a minute here, but I want to one step at a time here. If anybody has any questions before we move on, let's talk. I think the overall concept, backing up even further is just like really tough to be a business owner without a business plan to follow. And really tough to, follow a plan without it being in writing in something that you can, pull out at any time, so to speak, right? That you can reference at any time. Like in a, direct one-on-one coaching relationship, a lot of times it goes like, hey, show me your plan. Let's take a look at it and see where we are and what we need to do, from here if we're making progress on other things to where it's time to add something to the fold. Really tough to know what you need to do, especially over the time of a year, say, without a plan to tell you what you need to do consistently in order to reach your goal. So this becomes, it becomes tangible because if you're using plans the right way, you're going to be living it out and actually doing the things that are on this list. Second concept I'll introduce around this is the acronym SMART. Okay. So all of the strategies in your plan should be SMART in that they are specific. So S for specific. The M is for measurable. The A is for attainable or achievable, however you want to relate to that. The R is for repeatable. And the T is time bound, meaning, a strategy is a good strategy or a great strategy or something that actually is well defined and can be pursued when it's smart and it hits all of these, these letters, right? Of specific, measurable, attainable, repeatable, and time bound. So to compare the difference between a non-smart strategy and one that is, would just be to say, I'm going to go call people to lead generate today. I guess you got specific to say you're going to call, if that's what you meant, and you're going to call people, but that's about it. You didn't have anything measurable as to, in theory, you could go call one person and boom, mission accomplished. You don't know based on it not being measurable and specific whether it's attainable or achievable or not. Repeatable, like it can be repeatable to where you call one person or 100. And time bound, I guess sure. In that example I said today, so like that's time bound till the end of the day. versus the difference of I'm going to make 15 contact call attempts. So I'm getting even more specific as I talk through this, right? I'm going to make 15 phone call attempts to all the A's letter, like using an alphabet type of system, all the last names with the letter A, B, and C in my personal sphere database by 2 p.m. today. Specific call attempt. I could get even more specific and ask them, have a script to go along with it, right? And say I'm going to use that. Measurable, like you either had 15 or not. It's measurable. It's, hopefully whatever number you're choosing for a strategy becomes attainable or achievable. In this case, 15 in a day, can be repeatable. Let's develop strategies to where it's not like I did 15 in one day and now I'm totally exhausted and just gassed, right? But it's repeatable to where it's like something you can do over and over again and become consistent with. And then again, time bound, where by 2 p.m. I think I used in that reference, right? So like being real specific to that too, where it's all of that becomes a smart strategy to the acronym, but it's also just smart to plan that way, generally speaking, versus just leaving an open-ended, generalized type of like, you know, okay, I'm just going to lead generate today. Again, you could make one phone call and call that lead gen and boom, done. I'm going to share and I'll share this with everybody, but draft of the, where are we at here? So here's an example of a 135. Template wise, like this is just off a spreadsheet that you can create individually. So just a blank spreadsheet, Google Sheets type thing that you all have access to. You can be off and running with this. If you wanted something more visually appealing, or if you wanted to, really jazz this up marketing wise, whatever, knock your socks off, right? You can do whatever works for you visually and format wise and template wise. You can do whatever you want. But here's a an agent or a business plan for an agent that wants to sell 36 units at $250,000 average price point, so 9 million in annual volume for the 2025. So here's concept. I actually did a 155 with this. So I gave you 5 options for concepts. We've got lead generation, database, systems, social media, and personal development and growth as categories to focus on. And then the specific strategy, commit to a daily, weekly standard for attempts and conversations from the economic model for reaching your goals. For just training purposes here, example, standard of reaching at least 83 conversations per week. There's all sorts of different ideas and options here to gain more business, right? So host one open house per week with the goal of obtaining at least 5 new contacts to add to your database. See the difference on that SMART acronym with that sort of specificity? It's a tough word today. Versus just host open houses. Because you could get done with the year and host 3 open houses, and okay, in theory, you check that box if that's all it says. Or in this case, failure occurs if you're not on track for hosting one a week. And then taking it further where it's like, don't just show up and host the open house, like push to get new contacts to add to your database. And they got a goal of 5. So now it's like, okay, did they sign in? They signed in, they left their info, they don't have an agent. Like now you're more purposeful to kind of, not follow them around, right? But like want to get into an engaging conversation with them to hopefully it leads to the opportunity to follow up, even if it's just to plug them into some marketing content that you have. If they're not in the market to buy it, that's what they're telling you right there. Another example, smart, 2 attend 2 networking events per month with a goal of obtaining at least 5 new contacts instead of contracts to add to your database from each event. Send 10 CMAs to Met contacts in your database each month is another form of activity. Database, adding personal contacts. I'm going to share this with everybody, so I'm not going to run through everything here, but this is just a bunch of ideas for you to grasp onto and build your own plan with. And again, this is intended to where if you were to check off all the activities and actions on this list, on this plan, that you would be reaching your goal by the end of the year. So to develop a plan that's based on, this is what I need to do in order to reach my goal with actions and activities that are designed to, push you into action literally to generate opportunities, build relationships that generate opportunities, I should say. It becomes very valuable because now you can follow something throughout the year. Questions on this so far? I picked core strategies or core, priorities that, again, I'm biased, I guess, but this is what I would be doing if I were you, right?
Questions.
Go ahead.
Can we get a copy sent to
Yep.
us of this?
Yep, I'll be emailing it to you. But generally speaking, at baseline, my belief of this business is that you need to lead generate to a database systematically, right? So starting off in the business and really at all times, like I could see this plan playing out permanently, right? To where the core strategies are always, or the core priorities are always lead gen, database, and systems. And then you just have different levels of figuring out what to do, specific strategy wise based on where your business is at or where you're at personally with time available, progress, in the business, etc. The system side, maybe that falls off eventually when you have like systems that are tight and there's like you can become in maintenance mode eventually with it and not have to really develop things from the ground up, so to speak. But really lead generation and database related strategies need to be on there at all times, no matter where your business is at, right? Things like social media, arguably, needs to as well. Can you put that in a lead generation, type of concept? You can. Should it just be a separate standalone thing? Like whatever you prefer. Okay. Same thing, like personal development, growth, like, yeah, that should be on there at all times too, really, because you need to, both, go out and work to get opportunities for business. But in order to do that, you need to have the mindset and the skill set to be able to know what to do, right? And to know, how you need to go about it in order to do it. And that's stuff that you need to learn. So, arguably that needs to be on a plan somewhere at all times too. There's a lot of like foundational, like this, these principles and strategies. There's certain things that you just need to have on there at all times, like communicating with your database. There's other things that, depending on where you're at in the business at any given time, may or may not be relevant for that period of time. Questions on this 135 GPS concept before I move on? Oh, actually, I'll go back to that. So that's going to segue into a weekly plan. Okay. The Kellerism for a weekly plan is a 411. Now, what a 411 is essentially an organizational tool that takes, it's really like working back, similar to GPS where 135, this should really be 114 because the very top one is your annual goal. Then you have another, you would do one of these each month, but then a new one for each week. So you have annual goal as 1-1. The second one below that would be a monthly goal to achieve. And then you have 4 weeks typically in a month with essentially a list of what to do that week. Now, I'm more bearish, which be like, I'm like I would favor just following the template of a 135 or a GPS verbatim. To me, personal preference wise, the 4-1-1, the way I think of that is just like, what's your checklist of things to do for the week? Okay. And where does that live visually for you to follow? Okay. Because this back to the annual plan, the GPS, like that has to be like a saved document somewhere. A weekly plan, that I can see being something that's on a whiteboard or on a sticky note on your desk, right? Is something that gets, you do something and you check it off the list for your week, and it's kind of like, okay, good, I did it. Process wise, you're going to decide what to do for the week by looking at your annual plan, your GPS, and pulling applicable and relevant strategies from that to go out into the week and make progress on. Try is not really a word that we like to use around here, right? But like you're gonna, pick things from the annual plan that you're gonna go and try this week is what a weekly plan is for. So it's very important to understand, like the annual plan, like you're not doing 15 specific strategies at once. You're building with the sense of like, if I do all of this throughout the year, if I get to all of this within the year, it's designed to reach my goal. Where do I start right now? That's, I think you got to evolve around it, right? You start with the basics. You start with building a database and communicating systematically with it. Once you have that down and you're showing results, then it's okay, what next? Or once you have that down and you have enough time left in the day, then it's what's next, right? Or once it's habit, or you're going after a week where you're trying to get, in this example, 83 conversations. Well, along that pursuit could be also like, okay, I want to host an open house per week, so a weekly plan. Need to have 83 conversations. Need to break that down to 83 divided by 5, whatever that math is, but call it, I don't know, 16 or something. Um, I need to have 16 conversations per day. And I'm going to host an open house this week. This way, that's on your plan for the week, early in the week. So then now you're like, all right, better not wait till Friday night to figure out what open house I'm hosting. And you just start now on Monday. In this weekly plan, this weekly checklist, for lack of a better way of looking at it, becomes it becomes easy to get going with week in and week out once you start with 1 week and carry it into the next week, because you'll see like, okay, did I do what I need to do this week or not? And if you didn't, I guess first it's a decision of like, does this need to be on my list? Is it important to me? And if it does, then okay, let's not neglect it 2 weeks in a row. Let me take action on it and have it, maybe it's bumped up the priority list for the week at that point. But over time, you'll get to a point where it's like, okay, you know what? I either have habit of that activity and I don't need to have it on my weekly plan. So for example, when your lead generation process and activities become so strong that it's like you don't, you still track and monitor your activities, but like you don't need to focus on 16 conversations a day. It just happens. Then it may be like, okay, I know that's the foundation of my business. I've got a good groove with it. And you know what? I'm going to keep going with that, but I'm also going to bring something else in to focus on now to really push myself to, additional results. And then, maybe at that point you bring in, okay, I'm going to send 10 CMAs to contacts in my database this month from here. I'm ready for it. That sort of concept. But to start and end the week by looking at this weekly plan or this weekly list or checklist or whatever you want to call it, becomes a really powerful exercise and accountability tool to keep you making progress, continually moving forward. Now, I don't have a template for the weekly plan just to drive the point home of like, keep it simple. Like developing a weekly plan should really take about 5 minutes. So keep it simple, have it be somewhere that you're gonna, use, right? In some elaborate document that like, you got to go digging for, you may not use. But it could be items in your calendar. It could be like an email to yourself that gets pinned or starred or put at the top of the inbox, whatever. Could be, if you have a laptop like I'm sitting on and, that you're going to open and close it all the time. And there's a sticky note on, in front of it or whatever that you'll see every time that gives you, the visual attention that you need to execute on. Whatever makes sense. For all this topic, like when it comes to paper and whiteboards and stuff like that, when it's something like this weekly plan, like, getting crossed off the list and one thrown out each week type of thing, like I'm okay with it being more loose. But generally speaking, the day and age that we live in, like have things backed up into the cloud, right? So if your computer breaks, your phone breaks, whatever, like you shouldn't be in a panic of like, oh my God, there's something important on that phone or that computer that now I can't get. All things that are important should be backed up and saved. You know, it's really easy to do these days between email storage and Google Drive storage, which you all have a premium account for with your KW email that would be tough to run out of storage, frankly. You'd really have to have a lot of stuff. So it's just that sort of in the cloud um, concept is key to make sure that you're managing your information the right way and storing it the right way. Questions on the weekly plan, how to go about using it, building it. Last plan is a growth plan, which is the easiest way to think about it is like there's plenty that you need to learn. And this is the list of resources and books and podcasts and YouTube videos and articles, maybe even scheduling a conversation with somebody that's the expert at what that is, or somebody that you want to lean into to find out more. But having an organizational tool that tells you everything that you need to do from a learning perspective in order to reach your goals. Now, what you need to learn, again, I mentioned like the mindset and the skill set. That's where you need to focus on what you need to learn. So it's a mindset thing from like, do you need to change your way of thinking about this topic in order to really get good at it? And what do you need to learn and surround yourself there? Or is there like specific skills that you need information and to learn about in order to, really thrive from there? So, you know, you'll be turned on to different books, right? And it's like, you could get told, hey, go read this book and either like order it right then and there on Amazon or download the Audible or order the Audible right then and there. And then it's delivered at your door or it's, in your phone at that point. And you're, great if you're that purposeful. Or it's like this book gets told to you, it goes somewhere in your brain, and then eventually it's gone unless it was really important for you to come back to again order or do or get the audible, whatever it is, right? Or it goes somewhere that's an organizational tool for your business to where it's like this catch-all of like, okay, here's the things that I want to get to from a learning perspective so that I can further develop my plan, further act on my plan, things of that nature. And again, not a formal like, here's a 1-3-5 template that you should be using for a growth plan. It's kind of like I could see like if like the notes app in your phone, right? Like for me personally, I use email as a to-do list. So like if there's an email in my inbox, like that means it needs action, right? So if somebody told me, hey, you should read this book, and I loved it, that may turn into like me emailing myself the book title and ordering it or downloading the Audible and looking into it to see if it is something I want to read. Could be a way of going about this. You could just have you know, share a spreadsheet type of, concept that, you know, you're used to accessing. I would recommend like having, you know, central organizational methods, right? So like if you're big into spreadsheets, like great, just try to condense to a main, one or two or whatever, depending on the topic, as much as you can, so you don't have so many tools. But if you're not, no problem. And if you prefer, again, a notes app in your phone, no problem. Just use the tools that you want to use your way, right? I think that's one thing that I it's not that I don't like it because I understand like this company, like we're based on systems and models that have been proven to be successful. I think there's not enough perspective offered to where it's like, hey, here's an option for how to go about this. If you got a better way that works for you from a mental or physical or visual standpoint, do it. Try to have the same intention reached, right? To where it's like your annual plan is designed to have actions and strategies designed to reach your goal that you have for the year. The weekly plan is a design for taking those actions and strategies from the annual plan and bringing them to life on a weekly basis and accountability to do so. Growth plan is just meant to give you the things that you need to learn and having an organized, spot to do it in, or at least with checklist to have for it. Because otherwise you could consume and be drinking from a fire hose before you know it. On that note, like probably saying, well, that's nice and contradictory of you for all the consuming that you're making us do and everything that you're feeding us. The method that I'm bringing you through of the tools to have as a business owner, we're almost done. So this isn't like a never ending journey of like all the stuff that we need to have. Next week will be the fifth step, which is, business owner related type of tools like a profit and loss statement, a P&L, and the team around you that you need to have, even though you don't have a team, but you need to have an organization chart for your business. And on it right now will be a lender and an attorney and an insurance rep, building other vendors out for your clients to use that you do a lot of business with. That's part of your team. You need to treat it a certain way. So, but to recap, these tools for being a business owner, number one, the economic model tells you specifically what actions you need to take in order to reach your goal, how much you want to sell. Number two, your goals, why they're important to you, and what the goal is specifically, and how much income you need in order to fund it and obtain it. Those are, kind of weird tools in a way, right? If you're thinking from a literal, tangible sense, but like this is what becomes important to allow motivation to play out. Number three is your database, your pipeline, and systems. Just did number four with these plans, and the fifth stuff we'll cover next week. We're just going to keep coming back to those tools. and finding different reiterations of them, different ways to approach them, and how to use them. So I just want to provide some comfort to where it's not like, hey, we keep going over all these tools that I need, and feels like we're on a pace to have 75 different tools and things that I need to be focused on at any given time. It's not the case. That's good. Questions? We'll open it up now. Random Q&A. I know, Larry, you had a question about CMAs.
Yes.
Fire away.
Do you? So when you're doing it, I know Kaylee said not to utilize the quick CMA button, but to go in and like really plug in like the same number of bedrooms, the same number of this, and try to get
Yeah.
the most accurate models to
Yeah.
formulate your CMA.
Yeah, I think, so I think just to provide a general reference, uh, there's, like let's think of this way. Everybody knows what a Zillow's estimate is at this point, right? When I say everybody, like it's essentially a pop culture reference, right? So like pretty much everybody knows what his estimate is if they're a homeowner, and they likely know what theirs. So that is just based off of essentially algorithmic AI type of process and data crunching and whatnot. And it does provide value. Um, it just may not be accurate to the sense of like, well, yeah, this estimate for this house is 300,000 based on what, similar homes sell for in the area. But that algorithm or AI or whatever doesn't know that the house has 15 cats in it and it smells something horrible, and the seller plans to sell it in that current state, and they're not getting 300,000 as a result of that, right? So there's like a difference between, this is why, there's a whole AI topic, coming, right? But this is why I don't have any fear of like our industry going away. Two reasons. One, like it's the biggest financial transaction in people's lives. So people want to work with real people that they can sit at their kitchen table with and look them in the eye and feel a certain level of trust from that and rapport built. And two, like, yeah, the computers don't know how this experience and house itself smells, tastes, feels, right? And all that sort of stuff. So like just understand that. But to give you another sense of like, you know, um, working. And in this section here, estimated value, this AVM range and amount, provides kind of a general snapshot of what the algorithm thinks this home is worth. And we've got, I mean, these ranges are really kind of comical because they're like, okay, thanks for the, almost $150,000 range here. But, saying 461 and this is 399.9. And say if you had an interested buyer that was a budget up to 400, just at a quick look, right off the bat, you may be like, well, okay, this may be priced for a bidding war and, go above 400. From there, let me dig in further. What do we got? Where's the CMA? Here we go. I never really used this one, so it looks like it's not. I don't know if this is gonna give me what I want or not. We'll see. So this can be a tool because you have to find the comparables, right? So this is not what I want. I want an RPI. There we go. We're live. Here's what I was thinking of. Oh God, I haven't signed into this. Hopefully it works. Perfect. All right. So what are we doing there? 255 Macintosh. This is something where you can get, same thing, algorithm type data, right? Like it's spitting out 433 as the value. Now, this also gives you the ability to refine, based on what you know about it, right? So it's just, the default comes in at 433. You could, give it another $5,000 if you felt that was it, because it's got 4 bedrooms instead of 3 bedrooms, right? Now, when you update that, whoa, what happened there? 5,000 bedrooms. Ah, okay. Gotcha. I think you just type on it, there are not three. Right. I thought there was a way you could. Well, let's just do this. Let's say if it had 5. Some reason it feels it's less with 5 bedrooms than 4. So ultimately this is why you got to be careful with this algorithm type data, right? But you can get things spit out and it creates this nice report that you can use. However, just understand that it can be dangerous because you have, like, at this point I haven't looked at any of these comparables. What it is. There we go. All right, so I'm gonna just like, here's what I'm gonna offer. I don't necessarily have a problem using this tool. However, make sure that you find the comparables that you want to use. Like, that's my thing. I want to hunt for specific comparables to a property on a customized basis versus just trusting AI or the algorithm. Okay. So let's see how to do that real quick. So I'm gonna start with, just taking a look at this property itself and get a, that didn't know, get a familiar of the neighborhood. So I know this is Hilton Schools and this, Greece with Hilton Schools, this type of neighborhood over here on North Greece Road and English Road in between uh, Lada and English. So what I would do would be, I'm going to do a search here. So I know at some point this cuts off into Greece. So I'm just going to take like this whole area. So I know that part of it's Greece, but I know this one is Hilton Schools. So I want to look apples to apples as much as possible. And I want to look at Hilton School District only. Okay? So 6 active listings went down to 3. So I know that worked to narrow down. So we got 25 properties that have listed and sold in this pocket here in the last year. So it's a pretty good sample of data to work off of. Now let's look back at this house. We got a 2,600 square foot, 1990 built colonial with 3 beds, 2.5 baths. Notice that one of the bedrooms is downstairs, which for a colonial is not uncommon, but I guess I'm going to look at this differently to say, like, okay, it's the difference between a 4 bedroom colonial with 4 bedrooms on the second floor and a 4 bedroom colonial with 3 bedrooms on the second floor. Regardless, since there's only 25 comparables, I'm just going to look at all the colonials to see if that narrows down things. And it does to 11. So like now I have enough of a large enough but a small enough sample to kind of pick from and see, which of these individual properties I feel are directly comparable to this property. And yeah, I'm just gonna start like one of the things I do is like, okay, I'll try to, depending on how I think it's gonna go, I'm gonna select all of them and then deselect the ones that I don't want. So this one here on Thornapple, bigger, but near the same built time frame, much higher price, but it looks like they're struggling to sell. I'm gonna come back to that, see what we got. Here's our house on McIntosh. So I'm just gonna take that up. This one, Hillbridge Drive, built in 2017. So like right around the corner, same neighborhood, but built in 2017 compared to built in 1990, which is what this house is what for, and selling, listed at 629.9. I don't really want to use that as a comparable. It may be helpful to have a conversation with a seller or buyer to say like, hey, just so you're aware, bigger, much newer home by 27 years sold for 600 something, but I can't go into this saying, hey, your house is going to sell for 600 too. Crabapple 92, 2,100 square feet. Now we're talking. Hillbridge Drive 85, a little smaller, much cheaper. I'm going to leave it in there for now. Jersey Black 93, good. Southern Pine Circle, built in 94, 2,300. All right, decent. McIntosh Drive, same street, right? Yep. Built in 91, 2,600. Wow, that's 2,604. I'm really liking this one. Same street, a year older, similar size. This has 4 bedrooms. That's okay. I'll note that. I'm definitely keeping this one. We see so listed at 399, sold at 455. Johnny Gold, little small, quite a bit smaller, similar year built. Castle Grove, 86, smaller, 270. Like this one, I would take a quick look, like, why is this selling for 270? Sorry, I'm flying, but if anything, that seems like a good deal. Definitely dated, right? But not, like 270 compared to the 400s that we've seen. It's like, why, what size hole in the roof did this have, right? So interesting one there, but that's just, I think that's an outlier in the negative sense. And then this one a lot older and smaller, so and I know this house isn't sold for 225, so I'm just gonna get rid of that. So now we're down to 7. So let's see what's up with this Thornapple. It's a little bigger, or a lot bigger, 3,200 square feet. Guys, use a professional photographer at all times. Like things don't sell based on the way they're presented. So dated, a lot of potential, right? This is kind of so you got like side yard as the backyard. What's going on here? Yep, corner lot, right? So, pool in the side yard versus in the back of the house, like that's a factor for people. That's one of these like, it's not necessarily written etched in stone, right? But for a lot of time, a lot of people, like corner lots carry different values. And this is, I think, a prime example of like, yeah, it's great, it's got this pool, but it's like on the side of the house, and that's kind of funky. And like, I don't know, 515 I gotta pay for this thing. I don't know that I'm digging. This is the first comp we've looked at, so tough to say if it's too high at 515, other than they've been on the market 12 days and we know how this market is, so they're listening and adjusting. Here's a smaller one, Crabapple at 335. got the new flooring, got some staging going on, pretty well. Pretty well updated, move-in ready, right? Walk-in shower.
Okay.
Notice virtual staging, the differences. This is virtually staged. That furniture is not there. That's what it looks like. So I have an eye for this stuff. Uh, listed 335, went under contract right away. Safe to assume they got a bidding war. If you needed to, you could call this agent to find out, get a feel for where they ended up. This one, 250 delayed, went under contract right away. I would expect this to be dated at 250.
Can I make a comment about that house? I was actually in that house touring with my buyers last weekend.
Hmm?
And when I called to find out how many offers there were none in hand. And I had very, very little information that she would even try to share. So when I walked through it, yes, there was some of it outdated. It did need some work. Like the front doors, if you look, they were like a dual front door. Some of the windows were a little old. I mean, it wasn't bad. It was a solid move-in ready house. But if I was using it to compare other houses, I would definitely agree with trying to like call and get some kind of something. I just know ahead of time. Sometimes it's a little difficult. You know what I mean? To get
Yeah.
to
Yeah, I
get
mean,
some of that.
we'd be shocked if this sold for 250, right? So it's a matter of, did it go over, or did they end up, did the sellers miss the market on this one? Is going to be their take if they did, right? And as a buyer's agent, how do you pick up on these opportunities? How do you make a, like you had, Shannon, like, okay, they're not lighting the world on fire with this. Is this our opportunity to strike up? Versus just looking at this list and like, 250 in this neighborhood, like, gotta be priced for a massive bidding war, and just skip it. That sentiment leads to a lot of lost opportunity.
That was originally I will say, my quiet conversation to myself, not letting
Yeah.
my buyers know that I felt that way when they first said, I want to go and look at this listing. And my thought was, okay, I've got to go in there with an open mind because I think it's a little low for square footage, et cetera.
Right.
What is it that I'm missing? And sometimes you don't know until you actually walk inside and you step foot in there and you're like, oh, I get it now.
Yep. Now, I'm looking at this one that, same street, same size, 1 year older, just to see how this will stack up to the subject property. And I would say pretty similar. Maybe this kitchen was a little more updated. Overall, like, here's the comp from a spec standpoint. Now, Lyra, you had asked for the purpose of, okay, being able to do, CMAs for a, marketing lead generation tactic. What I would say is there's a difference between like just value that you're offering through lead generation and marketing and the approach that you would take, right? Because I could say, if I was doing this strategy and had somebody in this neighborhood that wanted to know what the market's like, I would just email them this data and put together an email with the link for them to reference. And then the concept is like, hey, if you really need a refined value, I can come over and check the place out and really dig into it further. For now, here's 7 comps in your neighborhood. Hey, which one most closely compares to your home without me coming over? That type of activity. If you're pricing a home for a listing, then it becomes like, okay, you have these 7 data points. You'll want to break them down per square foot. to get that analysis and apply it to the square footage of the home that you're listing. You know, you'll want to get more, in depth with, kind of coming to a, you know, what's the school term? Hypothesis, right? It's like what's, think of this as like, scientific, right? To where it's like, okay, here's what I'm going to tell you to list at, and here's why. Right? So just to be able to tell a story through the data that you have, to me, I'm more of a like, I would just use the individual comparables and then be able to speak to them than having it like an RPR formatted report that's automated but refined, because you end up having a lot of other like fluff or wasted space with the information that's in there that you don't get to, that kind of dilutes it. Versus, here's my opinion of your home's value based on comp one, comp two, comp three, and kind of telling a story that way versus just like, here's this automated report that put together all this stuff that frankly, like, we're not even looking at. So if you're going to use one of these reports, just make sure you have it formatted to your liking and to your presentation style and intent. I guess first and foremost with that CMA conversation becomes like, what's the presentation going to be? And having that, rehearsed and practiced and formulated and thought out, and there's a plan for it, right? Is a task to take on as an agent that's developing something, right? The more that you kind of establish these the foundations of how you go about your business early on, the better. Good stuff.
Can I ask a question?
Yeah, go ahead.
I know it's 3:30. Okay. So for you and Shannon, do you guys utilize that? I know like on the board it says send 10 like CMAs out. Do you guys utilize it? Did you guys
The
see any
strategy?
benefits with utilizing? Yeah. Did you guys
Yeah.
see any benefits from using that strategy?
Well, here's the strategy. Here's the script for it. Something you can all take into action today. So this would be for homeowners only, right? But hey, so like framework of a conversation, you just start by exchanging pleasantries, as I call it, right? And hey, how's it going? How's your son? How was Father's Day? How's the weather? Whatever, blah, blah, blah. What, small talk, right? Icebreaker stuff. I'm calling because if you have a minute, one of the things that I like to do for the people I know is to take a look at what your Zestimate on Zillow is. Are you familiar with that? And they're going to say yes, most part. And to actually compare it and confirm that it's accurate. It's been a fun exercise for a lot of people where like some people find out spot on, some people find that it's way too high for what the market actually is, and sometimes it's way too low and you're surprised at how much your home is worth. Would you be interested if I send you some data to take a look at that with you?
I like that style.
Cool. Go try it. Let me know what happens this week.
I will.
Love it. All right, y'all. Thanks for jumping on. Put me to work. Let me know what I can help with.